Aloha everyone, you're watching At the Heart of It. I'm Titi, and on today's episode, we sit down with former ROXY girl and now head commissioner of WSL, Jessi Miley-Dyer. I taught her how to make Mai Tais during this episode, which I don't know how we made it out of that episode, so tune in. Hi guys, welcome to At the Heart of It. We were going to do this actually via Zoom, and due to technical difficulties and fate, have you? Jessi's here in person, which I love doing so much more in person because it's so hard to especially with someone that I had just met, which I just met Jessi, who's amazing and awesome. But to do it over Zoom, to have a conversation over Zoom, it's so hard for me to do, but I can't imagine how it must be to watch, because I feel like you're just intruding into someone's conversation. But I love this so much better. Now we can have Mai Tais. We're going to make Mai Tais. Have you ever made a Mai Tai before?
No, I never have.
Okay, so we have the amazing Jessi Miley-Dyer here. And if you don't know, you better know. Because not only is she OG ROXY girl, but she is the commish bish at WSL. The head. Can I say commish bish?
Yeah.
Are you okay with that?
I'm actually thinking, can you introduce me everywhere I go?
Someone actually told me that they call you commish bish, and I was like, I love that. I'm gonna steal that. That's amazing. I feel like you're the epitome of started from the bottom now. You're does that song started from the bottom now here just run rent free in your mind all day? Because that would for me.
Oh, I wish. I mean, I definitely look back at photos and things and I laugh about the fact that I never would have thought that I'd be here when I was a little kid. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Right.
Even when you think back not only at what the tour kind of used to be and how it felt, and then also just when when you're young and you're who even knows what you thought you were going to do when you were 14?
Right.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you that I would be here talking to you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, in my wildest dreams would that have ever happened. I can't even imagine you telling your 12-year-old self hey, one day you're going to run everything the light touches here.
Yeah, fully. People sometimes ask me, what would you tell your 12-year-old self? Mm-hmm. And honestly, I probably would tell that person nothing because it would be such a waste of breath.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, 12-year-old me was pretty hard-headed and I'd be but not listening, at all. So there's a part of me that's I reckon that little kid would have been stoked to see what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And also the other part of that kid would just be yeah, duh.
Yeah, of course you are.
Yeah,
of course we are. All right, so you've never made a Mai Tai before?
No, I've never made a Mai Tai. So, I have drunk a few Mai Tais. I'm not going to lie.
So you're a Mai Tai connoisseur. You need white rum, dark rum, and the recipe usually calls for triple sec. Yeah. But we're not going to serve Jessi Miley-Dyer triple sec. We're going to make it a Cadillac Mai Tai, and we got Grand Marnier for you, and pineapple juice, limes, and garnishes. Okay, so you're going to make your own. Okay. So I'm going to pour this into there for you. You start with this. It's one healthy shot of white rum.
And is it going into
into your cup?
The ice cup?
Yeah.
I'm here to ask a really dumb question. I'm not joking.
We're all here to learn. There's no real wrong way to do it. Rum, ice, pineapple juice, drink. No.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, that's really strong. Is that really
how you make it?
Oh, sorry. I was wow, that's legit. I don't think I'm going to be able to drink it, but I'll pretend.
This is going to be a long show. I'm going to...
Yeah, do it. I was that looks like a lot.
One shot is yours.
Okay, great, thanks.
Two's
a lot.
That was my fault. I wasn't clear, but...
No,
I love
where your head continues.
I love where your head's at. 2 shots would be real fun.
No.
Okay, so this will go in there. And then you're going to do half. I'll pour this full, and then you're going to do half of this.
Okay.
In each.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I see what's happening here. Okay, and then you're going to maybe fill it to this line with pineapple juice. Go ahead.
To there? Yep.
Yeah. Okay, pineapple juice. You're going to squeeze half a lime in it.
Okay.
Together. I made a mistake of squeezing a whole lime.
Yeah.
In it. Don't do that.
Oh, yeah, no, I bet.
The worst. Okay? And then you're going to take this, the dark rum, and you're gonna float it on the top.
Oh, right.
So not the whole thing, just half orange.
What's the difference between white and dark rum?
That's a great question. They have the same amount of alcohol. I don't know. I feel like the dark one is just a little sweeter. But that just might be. But see that? Look at that.
It looks pretty legit.
Look at that. Her first Mai Tai. Hold on. Then you're going to take a pineapple spear.
Okay.
Stick it in there. Give it a swirl.
Oh, wow.
And then an orchid, obviously, for garnish. And your last one.
Wow, this looks great.
Look at that.
This is also educational.
That's what we're here for. We're just here to educate. Cheers, your first Mai Tai.
Yeah, thank you.
That you made. Oh, yeah.
Well, that's pretty good. It is very strong. I don't know what I was doing.
It is really strong. Look at that. Do you see that float she made? Look at that. Now you can go home and make these.
No, seriously.
It's really easy. We're supposed to talk about stuff now. But I don't know how we're going to. Because mine has a shot and a half in it.
No, sorry.
I'm so glad that we got to do this in person, actually.
Me
And
too.
I feel like I've been learning this lesson over and over to like stop being so controlling.
Yeah.
And things kind of just always like fall into place and better than I planned.
Yeah.
You know, because I was stressing out that my computer wasn't working.
Yeah.
You know, and of course, for you, I've never had a problem. All I do is hit record, and it's never been an issue. And of course, the one day it's like, oh my God, it's Jessi Miley-Dyer, and it's not working. And I'm sure you're like, I know you're so busy, and you're like trying to squeeze me in. And then she's like, wait, I'm coming to Hawaii in a week. We could do this in person. I was like, that's even better.
Yeah.
And then it got canceled again because of the rain.
Yeah.
Because it's dumping rain over here. Like you'll hear it, the microphone will pick it up, so it'll sound like trash. But I'm actually really glad that happened too, because then I got to go to the Women's Center.
Oh, yeah.
Which was such a huge eye-opener. Made me feel like I need to change like the trajectory of this podcast. And so Jessi hosted a WSL Women's Dinner, and Megan Abubo, Rochelle Ballard, and Blaine Davey. Oh my God. Like I had no idea what to expect. You know? I just thought it was a dinner for the women, you know, like, oh cute, we'll have cocktails. And the panel of them talking, I'm so grateful that I had gotten to experience that. And it's such a beautiful thing. And it was the third time you guys have done it.
Yeah.
Have you guys always had a women's panel?
You know, it's so interesting, that dinner, because I feel like you go into it and the conversation will go somewhere, you know what I mean? Like whatever kind of people are feeling and like what's important at the time, in a way that just feels like it's meant to be. And like even that panel, we went for like 2 hours.
I know, the dinner was supposed to be from 6:30 to 9:30, and like 10 o'clock came, and I was like, I wanted them to keep talking. Like I didn't want it to end. But it was so fast. It was so educational. I was so grateful to be there. I felt like every athlete, every woman that has ever asked a question or is asking questions, like would benefit so much from being educated about all of that. So like, I'm glad that I got to go to that dinner first, because I would love to share what they were all saying and how important it is that the conversation kind of just always comes back to men normally, you know, especially with all the male commentators are generally male, but Flick and AJ, I love watching them so much. They're so good. They're so talented. They're so fun to watch. Even when like Laura Ennever does it sometimes too, like she's my favorite to watch.
Yeah, they're so good.
They're so good. And all the stories that Lane was telling, I was trying to remember all the things. I was like, oh my God, there's so much. Like I wish I'd recorded it, and I wish like I wrote everything down. But Megan made a huge point about how the women of surfing, the history of it just kind of gets lost. Yeah. And the names are just kind of like, we don't say them enough, and we should be saying their names more. And I always ask this question, like, who's your hero? Yeah. You know, and I ask that all the time. And hero usually goes to my mom, you know, or my dad. And that's great, you know, but that's the wrong question. We need to be asking, who's the female surfer that you looked up to, that inspired you? So you, as an OG ROXY girl, who was your female surfer that you looked up to?
I really looked up to Wendy Botha when I was a kid. And, aging myself, but like when I started surfing, none of the surf brands existed. So Roxy didn't exist yet. And, I was pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
But I had this book of Wendy Botha that I had gotten at like a Scholastic book fair,
Mm-hmm.
which in Australia was like this thing at school. They'd come in, you could buy books. And I always remember it because on the front, she was a goofy footer. So I always thought Wendy was a goofy until I got older and I was like, oh, she doesn't even stand because I'm goofy footed. So I was like, I don't even know what it was, but I had this book about Wendy and I even got my board sprayed, my first custom board. I sprayed it the way that she had in this book.
What was on it?
It was like these waves around on the nose. So it was like 3 or 4 bands of color. And it wasn't quite the same. Like she had these really bright colors and I had kind of like the more like standard colors. But it was cool to have that. And then, I'm from Sydney, and on the northern beaches of Sydney, which is the other side of where I grew up, the Coke would have the Diet Coke Classic, which was the championship tour event. And my parents took me over to watch it when I was like 11. It was like the first time I'd been to a contest at all. But it was also the first time that I had seen these people in person. And so I have these photos that we had taken, and there was one in particular of me and Lane Beachley.
Oh, wow.
And we have the same sunglasses on. It was like the only thing I'd ever bought with my own money. I had the purple Oakley Minutes, and she had the light blue ones. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. I've got the same sunnies as Lane. But I always remember that. Like I always remember meeting her. And, Lane's from Sydney too. So I was like, oh, this is so cool. And that, meeting Lane in particular had, I think, a really big impact on me because it made me, I always remember it. And I remember how much it meant to me to see, other women surfing and, women who I'd been reading about. And it made me, I don't know, there's something tangible, I think, about meeting your heroes.
Oh, yeah.
And they feel like, not like they feel like ordinary people, but it makes you think that you could maybe do it. And not that I was thinking I could be a 7 times world champion, but I was like, oh, maybe, I could be a pro surfer, or, it doesn't make it feel so far away.
Right, totally. Because they're just like, you humanize them.
Yeah.
Right? And they're no longer, not no longer this idol, but like, you're like, oh, wait,
yeah,
you're just like me. Like, I could be you.
Yeah,
this could be us.
Yeah, totally. And I still have that photo.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think about that photo a lot of me and Lane when I think about WSL Rising Tides. I was like, I'd love to just recreate these kind of things for kids because I just remember how excited I was.
That is so cool that you are able to, because you were so involved at so young, know like what impacted you and then keep that perpetuating because you know how important that is.
Yeah. There's something about whenever I'm doing something or thinking about, things with the WSL or anything else, like I always think about how I felt when I was a kid. And then, to be honest, there's a lot of, the things that I would have liked to have had and, how I would have liked to have been made feel at the time if I had issues or something, or I just wanted to go talk to somebody. That's definitely kind of that real driving thing for me, or even like more like a centering kind of thought, because, there's so many things that you can do. And when you're making kind of decisions, I'm always like, okay, what would, how would I have felt in the moment?
Right.
Yeah.
And you have felt that way in the moment, which is so unique and so like important that somebody in charge like that knows what it feels like. Like people who are waitresses, and then become managers and then become owners of it. It's like they know how to take care of those because they know how that feels.
That's a really good point.
It's really amazing, and they're really lucky to know that somebody who is in charge is somebody who was once them. Do you feel like a lot has changed on tour since you, especially for women? Especially for women since you were on tour.
Oh, for sure. I retired in 2011 was my last year on the CT, and that was the year that I retired as well, because I was a bit, I didn't re-qualify for the tour, and I wasn't upset about it at all. Like I didn't really feel anything, and I was like, oh yeah, it's time to go then, because I had loved competing, but it also was kind of frustrating. Like, I was frustrated with, certain elements of it, and I was like, I can't keep, feeling like that. I come from a family of like really strong personalities. Yeah. And my family had always been like, you should, if you have the chance, you should absolutely, try and use your voice to advocate or whatever you think is right or even give your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't thinking that I'd get to be able to go and work for the ASP.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I actually wasn't thinking about that at all. Competing professionally full time is not the right thing for me anymore. So, you know, when the opportunity came to join the then ASP, I was like, well, this is actually a really interesting way for me, you know, to kind of drive all of that passion that I had and still have for like the tour and surfing. I also, on the same side, surfing did give me a lot, you know, and I had a really great career. I had great sponsors. I rode for ROXY for a long time and I rode for Rip Curl for a long time. I always had a lot of support. I was just like, oh, this, you know, I wonder what else it could be, because, you know, when you love a sport so much, you're like, you know, I think it deserves to be, you know, in the same, you know, and more so, to be honest, when you say it deserves to be in the same kind of realm as like big sports, more so athletes,
right.
You know, because all of the surfers, they work so hard and they're so competitive.
Yeah.
And that's one of the funniest things I think about surfers and our sport in general is, you know, we're really laid back. And I'm like, these are the most competitive bastards you've ever met.
Right. It's all a front.
Yeah.
It's part of the image. You're like, oh, the surfer. Like, just, it's not. They're badasses and they're hungry for it.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, it is. It's 100% part of the image. And I'm also like, go and play cards with that person and see how you go.
Right.
Go and play Monopoly. Like the amount of Monopoly boards that got flipped when I was, you know, on tour, just board games just being thrown across the room because someone's losing, and it's nothing. People are so competitive, they love it. So I always laugh. But
where there was a shoot we did for ROXY it was Megan and Sis actually did like we drew a ring in the sand, and the two of them start like sumo wrestling, trying to push each other out of the ring. And obviously it's just a shoot, like we're just playing. They're not. They're
Isn't that
right? Fully like sweat charging. It's like, oh, okay, well this is serious. This escalated so quickly.
Oh yeah,
like that's just, it's in them. Like they just can't not. And especially the two of them together there. That's how they are.
I know, it's so like, even playing tennis, the tour went through a phase of playing tennis. The tennis phase, I was like, oh, I can't play anymore, because I also am like, we're playing for like a couple of minutes and then it just becomes people trying to hit each other with the ball, and they're like, no, I'm not trying to do that. You know?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And not in like a nefarious way, just in a like naughty kids way. Like, I mean, it is funny to watch though, but it really shows how competitive people are and how badly people want to win and enjoy winning, you know, which is great. Like, you know, people should kind of enjoy it and not be afraid of that. You know, I always love when people are unapologetic of being like, yeah, like I really, you know, put in the work and I'm really going to try to win. And I'm like, yeah, go.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Is there something that you wish was in place when you were on tour that is happening now for the women?
You know, I wish when I was on tour, like it felt like an afterthought. So we've had new ownership come in and they've really been direct in that, like, hey, you know, like we believe in the women's tour, and just rebuilding the women's platform from where it was. You know, my last year on tour, my last CT event actually was at Huntington.
Okay.
And the surf was so bad. I was just on the shore break on the inside in Huntington, and you know, we're finishing the year in July. And I remember, you know, Steph Gilmore and Rebecca Woods came down for my heat, because I think people also, it's probably obvious that I was over it. And I was like looking at the surf and I was just like, I don't even know what I'm going to do with this. Like, so, you know, bringing back, you know, the big premier locations. And then when you think about having, you know, Pipeline on the tour, going back to Tahiti, I think they're really big things and like really important moments, because the women's tour, you know, having it fully combined and having all of the same resources, the same broadcast quality, all of those things become really important down the line. I mean, they're important in the moment. Like you look at things like college basketball in America, and the NCAA basketball tournament a couple of years ago had the women's locker room and weight room, and it was like, you know, 3 tiny little weights, and, you know, it looks very different to the men's. You know, 3 years later, you have like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, like really driving all of these viewership records. So the difference in those kind of things, I think, is how it felt for us.
No, that's so cool. I actually never even thought of that there is really no other sport that showcases both the women's and the men's at the same time.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah. And, when you tune in for the call or something like that, you don't actually know really who's going to go first.
Yeah.
And not even, it's just more even the nature of the sport that we're not sure.
Mm-hmm.
/ you have ideas and you can make the best plans, but sometimes you turn up and you just have no idea.
Right.
And there's something to be said about that too, where, people are coming and watching and they're like, oh, I'm going to watch the women's.
Right.
Yeah.
You're supporting surfing.
Yeah. You're
Men
supporting
and women.
surfing.
You're supporting surfing.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That is really important to give them all the same platform, the same quality of viewership, and the same commentary, the same people who are all just as invested in them. Okay, so you were signed to ROXY at 12?
Yeah, I might have been just 13, but
13?
12 or 13.
That's amazing.
Yeah, just
me too.
Yes.
No, I was actually 35 when I was signed.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's amazing. That's even better.
A crazy fucking pipe dream.
Yeah.
I actually started surfing during COVID.
Oh, wow.
I surfed in high school, just because I didn't want to go to school and I would go surfing instead. But I didn't actually get the bug until COVID because there was nothing else to do. So I would go surfing with Sis and Megan. I remember one day being out there, and I'm with two ROXY girls, and I'm so lucky that I'm being taught by these two. I remember sitting out there in the water. I'm like, so does the contract just come? Should I how do I get signed?
Yeah.
And I'm just joking. I don't really think anything of that. And I remember Matthias calling me. There was a contest in Malibu, and I remember walking back to it, and I was on the street. I was on PCH, and Matthias calls me. And I'm like, I don't know why he's calling me. And I was like, hey, Matthias, what's up? And he's like, hey, legend. I just wanted, I just want you to know that we really want you on the team. And I froze. And I was like, to do what? I was freaking. I was like, Matthias, I'm 35 years old. There's no way you want me to I was just so baffled on how I did it.
Yeah.
How the hell did I do this? How did I get here? Yeah. And I start crying in the middle of the freeway. And he's like, are you okay? I was like, no. And I remember getting to the beach, and I was a disaster. And everyone was like, what happened? And I just got signed by ROXY.
Oh, so good though. It's so good.
But I remember just it was this amazing feeling, and I can't imagine at 12 years old or 13 years old, unless you're born or raised in surfing, is it you're that talented and that you're that athletic that you would be accepted, and wanted on a team like ROXY. And I can't even imagine at 12 years old what I would have done. What's that like?
I'm I feel like I sense things to sponsors because I wanted to be that same feeling when everyone had that moment where you're like, oh my God, yes. I actually got.
I would love to hear your story.
Yeah, and I feel like I sent in little resume dossier, little things with photos and stuff, and it would have been one of my parents. So I have no idea where we even figured out where to send it. But I do fully remember my school photo was on it because I don't have any photos.
Right.
And also this is before digital photography, so who's got photos? And it was my school picture in there of me, and I was just what is happening? I mean, people would have those somewhere. I mean, probably not mine, but because now you have sponsor me tapes, and I never had any video or anything. I think it was a thing I had mailed in, and it was probably my home phone number. I think they called my mum, maybe. I think my mum answered the phone. It was pretty cool. For a young kid, I was in Sydney. There weren't a lot of girls who surfed in Sydney either. So I was thinking oh, this is rad. And ROXY is the dream. ROXY was there was everything that was cool about women's surfing was ROXY, so I was thought I was killing it.
I mean, you were at 12 years old, and you're still killing it. I just walk us through this, because how do you go from 12-year-old Brom with no footage of you surfing? I mean, obviously they must have followed all the contests you
probably
were in, and obviously seen all of that, how well you're doing, and wanted to pick you up. But how do you go? What were the steps? Please let us all know the 12 steps to go from the bottom to the top of being a surfer to being the head commissioner of WSL.
Oh yeah.
What from where? Start us from the beginning. We got time. I gotta hold my time.
God, I don't know. I mean, I competed in everything when I was a kid. Anything and everything. I competed in other sports too. You know, I've always been like really high energy.
Mhm.
People are like, can you stop talking? You know, so like I always did a lot of sports, and a lot of contests I went to, I would do both divisions. Like I would do the age division up.
Mhm.
And they ended up changing rules because me and Steph Gilmore started doing it when we were kids, but she was better behaved than me and she would just pick one, you know, whereas
Steph's such a good girl.
Yeah, she was way
She
better.
still is.
Yeah, because if you competed in the older age groups, you got to, you know, go to like the world titles and things like that. You could make Australian teams.
Mhm.
Yeah, I competed in both age groups because I wanted to try and make national teams and things like that. And then they said you could only pick, I think, only pick one. And yeah, Steph was only competing in the older one. But I was doing everything like that. And when I finished high school, at that time I was running for Rip Curl.
Mhm.
And Rip Curl were like, they gave me the support to do the qualifying series at the time. I'm not going to lie that I found the qualifying series really hard. First year out of high school, my first year on tour, you know, I was pretty young. I was like 17. I was like, oh God, I don't know if I even like this. You know, you're going all around the world, which was fun. But I was losing a lot and I was like, this sucks. I don't know. I found it really tricky. So I was like, okay, I feel like next year I'll see how I go. I had also kind of enrolled, next year I had enrolled in uni as well, like as a distance degree.
Okay.
Because I was like, at least this is it made me feel like I had like other options.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know how this will go. And I had a few times where I would enroll in uni and then I would withdraw because at the time it was really hard to do things online. In Australia, when you apply for uni, you apply through the government, like this government kind of centre. And so I had applied and then deferred and then been in something else and then withdrew after like a semester because they were like, you have to take exams in person. And I was like, okay, well, I can't do that. Thanks,
right.
Bye. You know, like
priorities.
Yeah, I was like, I actually just can't. It's never going to happen.
Right.
I had like my second year on the QS, I had like one, honestly, it was like an accidental final that I made. And it kind of like really changed the trajectory of me competing because I made one final by accident.
By accident?
Yeah, like it was fully by accident. Like I kind of was in like I was in a really weird hard heat. It was actually the ROXY contest that they used to do in Phillip Island.
Okay.
And this sounds really dumb, but I don't remember this still. I accidentally got barreled on one wave. And I was like, oh,
you accidentally get barreled? Me trying so damn hard to get barreled and she's accidentally getting barreled.
No, it was full. I was like, whoa, I don't know what's happening. And so I got through and made the final and I was like, whoa, that was like, not like that was weird.
That doesn't sound like an accident.
Yeah, no, it was weird. And then we went to South America. I got really sick.
Okay.
And really, really sick in the contest and won that one. And that's another accident. Like I was so ill that I didn't think about what I was doing, if that makes sense. I had like a stomach virus and I just couldn't even cope. And I remember it though because Pauline Menzer was there and I was pretty young still, like I think I was 18. And she decided that she was going to like help me, which I'm to this day really grateful for because like I'm trying not to throw up. And before the final, and at the same stage, I'm like, maybe I just will. And I remember going to the contest because we got on these buses, and I was like laying down to get before I got in like the dirt. We're in Peru, and I was like, oh, this is not good. And Pauline like got in and like kept people away from me for a second because she was like, you got to pull it together, like you can win. And I was like, okay,
you won sick.
Yeah, it's like there's something about being sick, I think, when you're just not focusing on like
you're not so stressed out about like trying to perform.
Yeah. And you're not thinking
makes sense,
like
actually.
you're like, okay, I've only got to catch 2 waves, don't fall off because it's gonna make it way harder. And just those like other voices in your head of like, oh, I don't know if I can, and all of those nerves, I find that I never had when I had something wrong with me. You know,
because you're just like focused on something else.
Yeah, I was focused on
don't die, don't
die, don't throw up, and also I was like, whatever, like maybe I will throw up in the water, but it's like there's something about it, and that those 2 contests, which were quite close together, meant that I made the CT, and that kind of was like kickstarted me onto
on tour.
Yeah, on tour, and I also did a lot of sports psychology when I was on tour.
Okay.
because I was really had this tendency to overthink things, which is why I think honestly being sick or injured or something sometimes helped me because it meant I couldn't think about stuff so much. I also was a bit of a tantrum thrower when I lost. Like I think
I know a couple of those too.
Yeah. Like honestly, now I think about it, I laugh. It's not funny, but even
was it bad?
Yeah, for sure. And even that
you
event
break your board underneath.
Yeah, even that event I won in Peru, I was riding a board that I wouldn't have been riding apart from I had like jumped on the board that I had been riding previously because I'd lost somewhere. Just like the dumb stuff. But it was like I just was so competitive / I wanted to win so badly and I was so annoyed and frustrated when I didn't. It doesn't make it right. And I was like, my dad was like, okay, like we're going to. So I did a lot of work with the sports psychologists around like cognitive thought and kind of switching those thought processes from being so repetitive in my head to thinking about the way I was feeling. And it took me a while to do it. I found that was really helpful for me.
Yeah, I did an episode with Caroline Marks,
cool.
And she brought that up too, that she sees a sports psychologist too, and it's or a sports therapist, and it's so helpful to her. And it was really, really good to like open up about, mental health, which is such like a buzzword, but the more and more like you untaboo it, it's so good that it becomes like the norm. Yeah. That people don't feel like they have to deny or admit that they do. Like everybody needs to see it there. Everybody needs we're all crazy. And I remember my therapist told me the people who don't think they need therapy are the crazy ones.
Oh, for sure. That's actually a good point. Yeah, I don't know.
That's so good. Like it's so good to like. No, especially it's crazy what you guys have to go through emotionally, physically. Like you're putting your whole life out on every time you guys go out on the water. It's so dangerous that you don't know what can happen. And on top of that, the stress of like trying to perform, needing to win, needing to get the heat, needing to get the waves, and like then to put all that pressure on yourself, falling off tour, losing sponsors, like all of those things to talk to somebody about it is so important and it's so like healthy. And I love that, we say it out loud. Yeah. So that especially the younger generation, it doesn't become taboo anymore. It's now the norm because we who've had to experience the taboo of it and be like really uncomfortable about opening up about it, we're doing it for them so that by the time they get to where you are, where they have to be, it's like that's the norm. What I found for me in particular when I was young, it's really hard having the pressure on you, like everyone's like so young. I can't imagine. So young, and everyone's like, when are you going to qualify? I found it really hard that year when I did qualify because I had won an event and I made a final really early. So I was like miles ahead in the rankings. And I was like, oh my God, if I blow this, like I'm never going to, exactly. I don't know what I'll think. And that's so much pressure on a 17-year-old. Yeah. Who's normally not thinking things like that. Yeah. At the same time, you want it so bad. Like, I find sometimes when you want things so badly, you try and like force them almost. Yeah. And like you can't. And there's a level of like, you just need to kind of relax. And that for me was really hard. I had a coach that would tell me like, you're not going to forget how to surf. You don't have to surf. Right. You don't have to surf every day and do all these things every day. Kate Walcombs who now works for Surfing Australia. You're not going to forget. And it was helpful because I was like, yeah, you're right. At the same time, I'm like, well, yeah. But it was good. Like the option of failing on something was really important for me with the sports psych. I mean, it took me a while to get there and I still had my moments. But, 1 year I literally almost threw my whole quiver off the cliff in Maui. And my friend was like... Maui, of course. Yeah, Rebecca Woods was like, what are you doing? And I was like, nothing. She's like, you sure you want to do that? And I'm like, in my head, I was like, yeah, I am. But I was like, yeah, that's a good point. Actually, maybe I don't want to spear everything I own off of the cliff. She was like, maybe not. When you're competing in a sport that you love so much and trying to achieve these goals that you have been looking at since you were a little kid, for so many people, we looked at the CT and you were like, I want to get there. How do I get there? You're reading about it in magazines and, you're like 13 and you have the chance to try and make it. There's so much of your self-worth wrapped up in competing in that, it's our recreational activity.
it's also your stress release. You know, for me, surfing, I always have felt better when I got out. And then at the same time, you know, there's so many eyes on you when you're a professional and you're on the world tour. People can see when you're doing well, when you're not. It's an interesting, fully. And it's like, it's a really interesting kind of space where you have everything wrapped up kind of into one thing. And it was kind of important for me when I did retire. And at the time, my parents were like, you can't retire from anything at 26. And I was like, I'm retired. I'm retired. I'm retired. It's crazy. And my dad's like, you're not retired from anything. I'm like, yes, I am. I'm retired. I'm retiring. And it wasn't from like a bad place or anything. I was like, I've loved this. And I was on the tour for 6 years. I still love the tour and I love surfing. But competing on my ass isn't really, probably not for me anymore.
Right.
Yeah. In the best way possible.
Right.
Yeah.
So you go from the QS by accidentally winning a contest to making it to tour.
Yeah.
And then on tour for 6 years and retire at 26.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what? And then after that, what was? Oh, and you're going to school.
Yeah, I was going to school.
You're going to school. Did you get your degree in?
Yeah, I have. It took me a while, honestly, and I didn't finish by the time I was retired.
Okay. 26.
Yeah, retiree. I have a master's degree in business from the University of New South Wales, and they have an elite athlete program, which was great for me. And the reason I even found out about it
That's amazing. I've never heard that.
I had a friend who I used to swim with who played professional water polo, and he played for Australia in water polo. His name's John O'Cottrell, and he played, like, he went to 2 Olympics, and I saw him one day down the beach, and he's like, I'm going to New South Wales Uni. And I was like, how? Like, because I knew he lived in Spain like half the year. And so he was like, you should go and talk to this woman, Helen Bryson, about how they would help you, you know, working with professors and, you know, because it's not fully online, the university. So there were like some attendance rules and stuff. Again, like a bit of an accidental meeting where I actually found the uni where I could do it, because I enrolled in 2 other unis who were not down with me.
Your schedule.
Yeah, not down with me kind of being all over the place.
Right.
Whereas there were some things, I mean, there was even like an exam I did 1 year in Hawaii online, and Al Hunt had to watch me. He was
While
like,
you took it?
Yeah. And I was like, what are you, like, and he was like, I'm going to sit here and watch you.
And
I was like, are you
cheat?
I was literally like, are you serious? And he's like, yeah. Which I loved a lot. I was just like, this is gold. But I've done, I've done some exams in weird places. I had to do like a online, like not a big exam, but I had to do an online quiz once when we were running the contest, like in Brazil. Because, you know, you don't have, when you're doing things that are not fully online, you don't have that flexibility of whatever time.
The time difference,
Yeah.
So you're still on university time no matter where you are.
I was like, whoa. I was sitting there doing it and I was just like, this is so bad. But it was good. But it was like kind of one of the harder things I've ever done, I think, for sure. The last kind of 2 weeks of my master's degree, I was like, oh my God, I had to stay in France actually, which was a great place. But I was like, I need to get some of this work done and I can't do it. Like, I'm not going to get it done.
So you get your master's in business, right?
Yes.
When you started during the tour.
Yeah, it took me a long time.
I mean, it's good to know too. Like, because there's a lot of young athletes who are on tour.
Yes.
It's
really hard.
Trying to do both. Like, I even talked to some of our groms on ROXY.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're all homeschooled. Yeah. And trying to like do the QS and do and trying to like pursue the route that eventually leads them to tour.
Yeah.
It's good to know that there are options for them to do it all.
Yeah. Like there's a bunch of online universities, and I know there's even some here in the States. It is really hard. I mean, I was probably like the only like mature age student getting like yelled at by their parents. I was like, oh my God. It made me feel better to have the option, you know, and to know that I was thinking about something else, and not even that you're like focusing it on something, but I felt better knowing that I was looking after the option to do something down the track.
Right.
And I also had been dealing with a few injuries, you know, so I was like, if there's one thing injury had taught me, it's like it can all just go like that.
Totally.
So it made me feel like, you know, if it all ended one day on the tour that I'd have something else, even if it wasn't finished, I had something else that I could go and do.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it took me a really long time. It was really hard. Honestly, there were times where I was like, this is awful. I'm really glad that I did it, but it took me a long time to get there.
I mean, that's a lot. Like that's a lot to do. I mean, college in general is a lot. On top of that, like trying to compete and do all of that's insane.
Well, there wasn't Instagram back then because I'm so old. So I was like, probably
so I aged myself recently because I was talking to one of my hula sisters who is significantly younger than me, and I didn't realize how much younger than she was talking about her high school prom.
Oh yeah.
And she was talking about like, I don't know how it came up, but we're talking about like, oh yeah, well, we didn't have phones to like everyone has a camera now. You can just take photos. And she was like, I had a phone, and I was like, oh shit, that was just me. We didn't have that. No. It's so crazy. Like I can't even imagine being that young and just having a phone, having a camera at all times, and then on top of that, social media.
Yeah.
Like that is way too much responsibility at such a young age.
It's one thing, to be honest, that I think, not having social media through my competitive career.
Right.
There's a part of me that's actually grateful because it's a whole other hugely pressure-filled environment.
It is.
I just think it would be really hard to navigate, especially when you're so young. I see kids navigating it, and it looks really tricky.
It's hard as an adult.
Yeah, I was going to say it's hard anyway.
It's hard as an adult, and constantly, and I'm emotionally mature enough to be able to handle being able to not compare myself or the pressure of it feels like that for little girls especially who see other women and what it looks like to have a lot of followers and to like compare yourself like, oh, I have to do this or she is more important than me because she has more followers. Like I can't even imagine the kind of pressure that would put on a little girl who is trying to navigate her adolescence into adulthood. But what I loved about the women's dinner is that you recognize women who deserved their flowers and deserved their recognition before there was a time of social media. Because if they had that at the time, right, what the difference of their notoriety would be had they had that. Like girls like Betty Lou who have it, girls like Moana Jones who have it now, who have that platform to build themselves their own level of being recognized and being like they get to put all of their accolades up for everyone to see. And at the time, Rochelle, Megan, and Lane didn't have that. You relied on magazines, and they definitely deserve the recognition that you gave them that night. And it's so important we say those names, and totally made me realize how much research I have to do, and how much how important it is to ask the right questions, the responsibility of social media and networking and interviewing people, and who I want to interview. And I told Roxy, I was like, look, let's get Megan. Let's get Lane. Oh my God, Lane blew me away. The stories that she was telling, what blew me away the most was how much knowledge she had about Hawaiian history. Yeah. When she told the story of the stones at Pipeline. Yeah. And the family that was turned to stone by Pele, and that's the stones there. Those stories are never told. Yeah. Those are all online, and only people who would dive into mo'olelos would find those stories. Yeah. And I've done actually a couple culture opening ceremonies for Pipe Masters. Oh, cool. And I've danced hula for them. Those are fairly new. I don't remember them. You guys always doing that. Yeah. And I've done the past two. Oh, cool. And I it's beautiful, and it's always really, really colorful. It's always uplifting. There's always a protocol, and an oli, and then the hula. And I feel like what Lane shared needs to somehow be incorporated into that, because I feel like the surfers definitely would love to hear that story and also be the ones to spread that story. They should know the break that they're surfing and the responsibility and the honor that they should give those stones that are there. They're not just these life-threatening stones that are down there. That is part of history.
Lane was amazing.
She was amazing. Yeah. I was speechless when she started talking. And then she brought up Alex Florence. Yeah. Why don't we talk about Alex?
I thought the same thing, because
she's a legend. Like, she is the
Yeah.
mother of 3 of the world's best pipe surfers, and we don't talk about her.
When she was talking about Alex, I was like, I remember Alex surfing pipe.
I remember seeing her when I was little.
With the
Insane.
longboard and no leg rope. Auntie Meg's was the one that was like, had no leg rope. I was like, so I always remembered Lane, you know, we'd drive past and she had that Beetle and she would park it in the same spot.
Yeah, which is such a cute, I love that story. And if you knew it was bad, you wouldn't see Lane's car there.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, we're not going out, Lane's not here.
It must have been like unsurfable. There's been so many women who've been dedicated to pipe, but like she was there every single day. To your point, like about social media, you know, it's so tricky to navigate. At the same time, the ability for you to share your story and your own narrative on Instagram is so important because we were more beholden to whoever was an editor at a magazine.
They're telling your story.
Yeah. And now
that's crazy.
Yeah, you can tell your story yourself.
Yes.
And for someone like Lane Davey, she could have had the ability to talk about what she was doing at Pipe and, you know, what she was even saying about the families at Pipeline and the Stones. I had never heard that story either.
Same. That was the first time I'd ever heard it, which made me dive deep into looking up these stories. Yeah. You know? And it's so important that everybody is given that opportunity to dive into those stories for themselves and do the research themselves because it's beautiful and it's bigger than us. Yeah. And it needs to be shared. It needs to be like told.
I sent her an email and I was like, I really think, because she was like, I hope that was all right to share. And I was like,
I hope that was all right. That was better than I could have imagined.
I was like, I don't think you, like, I think too sometimes you forget, you know, for someone like hers, I think she hasn't had the recognition she deserves.
Totally.
By any stretch of the imagination. And, you know, when you haven't had that recognition, you're not sure if people want to listen to what you have to say. And listening to Lane Davey speak about her experiences at Pipe, like the whole room was like just dead still.
Oh, yeah. Like, it was just so unexpected.
Yes, unexpected is the right word.
Why doesn't everybody know who you are?
Yeah.
Like, everybody needs to know who you are.
Yeah.
And everybody will now because I'm going to talk a lot about all of them. Megan, Rochelle, and Lane. I hope to come to the 4th one because
hopefully.
I can't wait to see who was in that panel.
When we started doing the women's dinner, it was around like, so everyone in the industry would know each other. Yeah. You know, because...
Which is amazing too.
I personally like the idea of, you know, some of our up-and-coming staff in WSL and up-and-coming staff at, you know, brands and things like that, being able to know each other. And if they need something, they could just pick up the phone and call. I think there's like real power in being able to reach out directly and to have those personal relationships because so many of them exist and they're not always held, you know, by up-and-coming women. Right. So I was like, I really want people to walk away having known each other.
Right. And then you keep it consistent. I'll see you next year at this dinner.
Yeah, fully. You know, you can't underestimate the impact, you know, that people have had on lives, but, you know, the Instagram wasn't really around and those women's surf mags don't exist anymore. Right. I mean, to be fair, there's no men's surf mags really either. Right. Like there's like 1 or 2 maybe, you know, the opportunity for people to get photos in magazines and stuff. It's not the same as it was for us when we were, you know, going out with our digital cameras. Right. Like the little pink Sony thing that I have, you know, so like people, for them to get to come and talk about their experiences of these breaks, I think it's important.
It is so important, and I really loved, and I'm so grateful that I got to go to that, and that we didn't get to have this interview before that. Yeah, because
it was all meant to be.
It was all meant to be, and I was telling you, I'm learning this lesson over and over to like let go of control because things actually fall into place when they feel like they're falling apart. Yeah, and they turn out better than you could have planned out, anyways. Yeah. So, and with this whole rant with my ties, and I know we're like, because I'm taking notes. We're writing this down. I need to write this down. We're accidentally winning the QS.
Oh, yeah.
Right? We're on tour.
Yeah.
We're getting our masters.
Yeah.
What did you do after that?
I don't know. I think...
How did you climb the corporate ladder?
God, I don't know. Like, I've always been... I had the opportunity to go to America, you know, and work in the LA office.
So from Australia?
From Australia.
Okay.
I knew that I would learn a lot working in that office and I'd be around people that I probably wouldn't have been around in Australia. I also knew, like, WSL was attracting all of these, really senior executives from other sports and other industries. And I was like, yeah, for sure. It also felt like an adventure.
Right.
Like, I've never been someone that's had like an aim or a focus on like certain positions. It's always been important for me to do things at work that I was really passionate about and that I wanted to do. When I talked about having that sports psychologist and making cognitive decisions around like in your gut and what you really felt was the right decision, I still use that. I kind of do believe as well, which sounds lame, that if you're really passionate about something, it won't feel like work. Yes. And that you'll be more inclined to work longer hours or be getting up really early to do things.
Because you genuinely care.
Yeah. So I've kind of always been like that, in that I never sat there and I was like, I want to be like a VP of a company or something. For me, it was more around the ability to influence decisions for things that were really important. And that's how I've focused on things and never looked at job titles and stuff like that. I've always thought about, how can I do something that's important to me? How can I do things that are making a difference? All of the things that we've kind of done at WSL, they've been for the next generation. They're things that would never benefit me, but I'm really happy that it benefits somebody. Think about equal prize money and the differences of what we were making at the time. I think it's important that kids and little boys and young girls are looking at the tour and all of the junior divisions and just seeing it like the way that it will be for them. They'll never even know that people made whatever percentage,
right,
in prize money. And I think then those are the things that I'm like, okay, that's why I'll get up early.
So really, you just did one step at a time.
Yep.
Genuinely cared about every step. And before you knew it, we're climbing it.
I'm really big on, I'll do everything to the best of my ability all the time, and I'll try really hard. It's important to me that I put everything into it, and if it doesn't work out, then I'll know that I tried.
But that's amazing. That's, I think, the takeaway. If you do something authentically to your fullest, right, that makes you the most happy, that fills you, there's only one way but up. My brother actually I just watched this interview that he did the Super Bowl 1 year.
Sick.
And he failed in a lot of times. There are people who told him, you're not good enough, or you're not this, or you're not. Someone told him he wasn't a star, and that he was right. And all these people who are going to tell you you can't do it.
Oh yeah.
If you believe that you can, and you are putting all of your energy into something that makes you the most happy. It doesn't matter what anyone says. There's only one way but up. And if you're doing each step, which you have done, right? Whether you accidentally won a contest or not, accidentally gets barreled. Just so irritating.
I swear
I'm still irritated.
I can still think about it. I was like, what?
I'm still mad. But you do everything, even sick, right, to your fullest, because it makes you the most happy. Until one day you're the head commissioner of WSL. And here we are having Mai Tais. Cheers, bitch.
Cheers.
Oh my gosh. People need to know, too. I hope that people take away from that is that there's no cheat code.
Yeah, fully.
There's no, the only way to do anything is authentically. Alexa, play Started from the Bottom now. We're here. And turn it up.
Started from the bottom. Explicit.
Explicit! Hell yeah! Alexa, turn the volume to 10. When I hear this song, I think of you. Alexa, stop the music. Thank you so much for opening my eyes, helping me realize what I can actually do, with this podcast. The responsibility that I have, and just that night alone and meeting you and speaking to you, and it's so inspiring. Your presence, your being is just so inspiring, and I feel I'm so glad that we got to do this.
Yeah, me too.
And in person, and over my time.
Yeah, we're gonna change the world.
Cheers, babe.
Cheers
to us. Started from the bottom, now we're here.